Hello everyone, I am Mahesh and I am Senior Test Automation Architect with 14 plus years of experience in the field of test automation. I worked on web automation, mobile automation, desktop automation, then performance, then also worked on the 5 years in the R&D department where I worked on the different technologies like Java, C#, Python, R language, Ruby. Okay, and again, I worked on Selenium BDD, REST assured, mobile automation, then load and performance and different areas. Apart from this, from the social side, I have helped near about 2000 plus people to learn automation, where 1000 plus got very good opportunity in the field of test automation in the renowned organization. I have one patent on my name and another in queue. Also, I did my education in B in computers and MBA in international business as well as in IT. Now today what I am going to show you is what is frame and how frame works. When we talked about frame, so the first question that people may ask you, do we really require a frame? So I'll just show you one example. Okay, so let's take an example of this web page. Now consider this is my web page. On this web page, let's take an example of this is a banking application. Okay, now when I talked about this application, let's consider this is my top frame, this is my left frame, this is my center frame, and this is my right frame. And when we say this is a frame, so what happened in the frame? Like if you wanted to try to access any of the element from any of the frame to the next frame, then it is not possible. The reason is because the frame has some restrictions, or we can say is a boundary that you cannot access any other elements from any different frames. That I'll explain you how. Now there is an iframe. So when we talked about iframe, it is known as inline frame. Iframe is an inline frame. It is the tag used in HTML5 to embed an HTML document within a parent HTML document. So when we talked about iframe is a tag. You can use that iframe tag into HTML5 to identify any of the frame. Then next, there will be a question in interview. Tell me what is the difference between frame and iframe in Selenium. So when we talked about frame enables a developer to split the screen horizontally or vertically by using the frame set tag. So the frame will always work on for the splitting any of the screen, like in the horizontally and vertically. If you can see on my screen, I can use that frame here. Now frame and frame set tags are deprecated, so that is not used nowadays in HTML5. So from HTML5 onwards, those tags are deprecated. So previously the application, those were developed in a frame, they were using frame and frame set. These are the tags they were using. Now the iframes are mainly used to insert content from external sources. So the difference between frame is frame enables developer to split screen in horizontally and vertically, where iframe is mainly used to insert content from external sources. Like if you wanted to enter something like the advertisement, you wanted to showcase your advertisement on the web page, or you wanted to float something on the web page. So you can set all this position on iframe and a specific position on the web page. Now the next question people may ask you, or in interview people may ask you, do you know the way by which we can identify the frames on a web page? So let me go back and showcase you some of the sites. So let's say this is a site where we do have a lot of frames. Okay, so now the question is, how do we identify that this page or this web page is holding the frames? So the first way to identify is, let's right click on this web page and you will identify here there is a reload frame. Once you right click on that page and you can see the reload frame. That means this web page is holding a frames. Okay, now I have another site. Let's try and see. Again, this site is holding a reload frame. Let's try with any other site again and try to identify if this is holding the frame or not. Okay, so this is how you can identify if this is holding your frame or not. This is how the way. This is the first way by which we can identify. Now the second way that people may ask you, how we identify or how do we know like this site is holding the frame. Again, to know that this site is again holding a frame, the way to identify is you simply right click here, try to inspect. Right click and try to inspect. So what I did here, I just simply write and try to inspect, and then I can identify all the elements or all the tags, those are a frames tag. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll try to identify all those tags, those are the frame tags. So I simply go to console, I'll simply clear here. So I'll write $X and this. Okay, so what I'll write here, I'll simply write here and I wanted to identify a frame. So if still the point, so currently what I had written my XPath. Okay, so I'll take for XPath, I'll take another session for you guys to understand how XPath works. But currently what I'm showing, I'm writing a very basic XPath here. What I had written, I simply write $X and then brackets, and I try to identify as an iframe. When I write it's an iframe, it will give me the number of frames those are available on this web page. Once I write those, it is giving me the number of frames this site is holding. So if you can see here, I can see there are number of 15s. These are the number 15 frame we do have. So let's hit enter and I can see all the frames listed over here. I simply click on this arrow, and what I can see here is I can have at 0 index this frame, first index this, second this, third this. So let's click on any of this frame and you just identify how that frame tag is maintained. So if you can see the frame tag, I do have iframe as a tag. And if you can see, I have the index at 0 position currently. Okay, now I do have the different ID. Let's say ID equals Google Ads iframe and something .com box 2 _ 0. Same way, if you can see, the title is third party ad content, whereas name is something no, and all these attributes. So this is my tag, and whatever others you can see, those are all my attributes. Now all the attributes are holding its value here. Now my important thing is I can understand now this page is holding the iframe by these two way. First way, that I can see if we do have the reload frame tag here. Second, I can inspect and identify the number of iframes on this page. So let's try to identify and print these frames on the page first. So first assignment we can do, we can go back here and I can simply right click here, and I am writing my new code base today, that is my frame. So I'll write a frame implementation, for example. Okay, I'll simply write frame implementation. I said public static void main. I just now finished that. So I copy that code base, so I don't want to waste any of our time. So system.out.println, and we can simply copy this. Then we can just add that URL. So let me open here, and what I'll do, I'll write here. Now what I want, I just have my system.set property, which is runtime property that I can set. Then I do have a driver instance which is set here. Now what I do is I just wanted to implement that driver.get here. When I say driver.get, I wanted to open my URL. So I'll get this URL here. I'll get this URL here, and first of all I'll try whether this code works or not, and then only we proceed with how to identify those number of frames from the one page. So what we did, I simply run this code base and let's see if it will execute. If it will execute, yes. So yes, so the page is working. Now I wanted to identify the number of frames on this web page. So how do we identify the number of frames on this web page? So first what I will do, is I'll go back here and I simply write my code base. That is driver.find elements, and I write by tag name. I said the tag name that I have identified there is iframe. The tag name that I have identified there is iframe. So I write driver.find elements by tag name iframe, and then if you know, the find elements returns the list of web elements. So if you can see here, the find element return the list of web element, where the find element return a single web element. So let me write here the list, and I can simply write that list of util, and I said this list is of type web element, and I write here my frames, for example. So what I did, so I simply write here I'll find elements, and then I said the list of web element. Now what is a possibility here? Sometimes this will reload, or sometimes this will return you 15, sometimes there will be a frame near about 12, sometimes there will be a 10, because those all the frames are dynamic. So I want this whole page to be load, and then only particularly we need to identify the number of frames. So what I did here, I simply try and enter this frames.size. So what happened, this frames is a type of list, and list is type of your collection. So I'll take that collection section later on session. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll show you a very simple code base right now, where I can try to identify this frames.size now today. Now in this frame.size, the size will return me the number of elements, or number of elements that this list is holding. So that will return me the number of elements. I am simply printing that because size is returning integer value. If you can see, the size is returning the integer value. So that's why I'm simply printing that value. Now what I said, purposefully we can wait for some time, otherwise this code will be failed. Now when I said we can wait for some time, the synchronization topic I can take after some sessions, but currently I'm using a very basic, that threads.sleep, and I can write here for 10 seconds, or for some time we can just wait here. So now what I did, I simply write, once I open this site, just wait for some time, then load all the frames, because frames are taking so much of time to load, and then get the size. So I'll simply execute this code, and we'll see what is the output of this code base. So let's execute this code, and we'll see. So it is opening. So it is opening my site, and so I'll show you the multiple way to identify this. So purposefully I had given that time. Okay, so synchronization will take more in detail in some particularly in upcoming sessions. So now let's say a whole page is load. I wanted to see whether it is load or not, and whether it prints or not. So what I'll do, so let's go to your control. If you can go back here. Yes, so it prints 11 now. So let's try and identify how many of the frames this page is holding. I'll simply write the same code base here. I'll simply write my same XPath here. I write iframe. Okay, so what I did here, I write simple the iframe. So I can get the total 12 because it may take some times to load. So this is the one way which I am showing you by which you can get the number of frame size. Okay, so synchronization definitely we'll see later on, where it is waiting for all frame tags to load. I'll show you that also in upcoming sessions, where we can see how do we wait for some times to load all the frames and how our synchronization work with your Selenium. Now, there is another way also. I wanted to take one session on this JavaScript executor, but let me show you one code base by which we can get the number of frames on the same web page. So what I can write, I can simply write JavaScript executor. Okay, JavaScript executor I write, and I write JS exe, for example, or JS executor. Okay, and then I write what it is. So I said it is my driver, and I just close. So what it says, just typecast your driver to the JavaScript executor. So I did that. So my JavaScript executor, now the driver is holding my JavaScript executor. So now I can execute any of the JavaScript code. So what I'll write, the first thing that I wanted to write is, I wanted to parse, let's see, first of all, I'll write my code base here. So how do I write my code base? I'll write my JavaScript execute, and then I said execute script. I said execute script, and I wanted to pass the JavaScript code. I wanted to pass the JavaScript code here. So what I will pass, I'll simply pass here that return dot return window. Probably I'll write return window dot length. Okay, I'll write simply return window dot length, and let's see if that works. And I said dot to string, so I'll convert that into a string. And then once I write this whole code, I can do this. I can just convert this into, or parse this into a integer, because I wanted to print the number of, how many numbers probably that is holding currently. So I just wanted to print that now. So I said I have my integer dot parse int, because this is my one of the number. Okay, and now I wanted to store something, because if it is the integer, then I can store in integer. I can store in, let's say, a number, for example. Okay, and I can store in number, and then I can just try to print this as well. I simply try to print this as well. So it should return me another way. It should return me the number of frames this particular page is holding. So let's try both of this code base. I'll just simply run this code one more time. I'll simply close the previous one. Simply run this code, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it is opening my web page. Now let's try. So once this whole page load, we can see what is the output of this execution. So it may print 11, 12 if it is dynamic, any number, or 15, or sometimes 12, sometimes 16, any number it can print. We'll just have a look. So once it is done, we'll go back here. See, now if you can see here, the first I used a collection, that is array, the list collection. Okay, list, and then with that I can get my frame size, and it will print 12. Now what I did, I used another way, that is my JavaScript executor, and by which I simply write the number of window that is holding by current driver. I want number of window that is holding by current driver. Just convert that into toString. I am just parsing that toString into integer, storing that into integer, and let's print that into integer. And we just wanted to see how many number of frames are there. Now let's try one more time how many number of frame. This time it is printing 12, and we can just see if it is still holding the 12 or not. I'll simply write here again, this time the $X, and I said I frame. So if you can see, this time it is returning you 12. So this is how we can identify the number of frames on the particular page. Now these are I covered as of now 4 questions in interview on the frame. Now what I can see, the next question that people may ask you is, how do we proceed if there are the web page? So I'll take an example of the web page that I have showcased here. So now the web page is what this web page says. This web page is saying, on my top frame I have this is my frame 1, that means this is at index 0. This is my frame 2, that means this is at index 1. This is at index 2, this is at index 3. Now at my top frame I do have my username. Once I log in on this system, let's say this is a banking application as I mentioned, once I log in on this system, I can see my username and I can see logout in the top frame. Okay, so I can see both of these two things on the top frame. But when I go to the fund transfer, I can on the left navigation. So this is my left navigation where I can see fund transfer, restatements, and some other URLs. Okay, or the links we can see. Then on the right hand side, these are my quick links. So quick links are any of the user to save their user clicks. We just have the quick links on the right hand side. So same way I do have this account balance at right hand side. Now once I click on this account balance, I can see there are the 10,000 amount, or we can say the 10,000 balance into my account. So whole this flow I wanted to automate. So we can do this whole flow automate by our current code base. So we wanted to go first and come to this page where I need to validate whether I am on the home page or not. Once I am on the home page, then I wanted to identify whether my username is correct or not. Once I can see this is my username, I simply need to validate whether I do have the fund transfer link on my frame 2 or my left frame. Then I wanted to see on my right frame or my quick link I do have account balance link, and I can click on that account balance link and then I can see the 10,000 as a balance amount. So let's go back and automate those flow. So let's say I have loaded that application and now I can start. First of all, I wanted to identify whether I'm on the correct page or not. So how do I identify? I can simply start my code base so that you can understand. If I'll not go more in detail about that common functions and all that we can see definitely in the framework session. But today I am going to show you how we can automate all this frame. Okay. So first of all, I wanted to see if the driver dot get title dot equals, that is a home page. If I am on home page, then only I will proceed. If I am on home page, then only I will proceed. That means once I can see that I am on home page, then only I can validate whether I have my username here or not. Okay, so till the point I can't do anything. So consider I have just entered my username, password and click on sign in, and then I jump on the home page. Now you can see here I can say driver.getTitle equals home, and then the first thing that I want to validate is my username. Now there is a way of the frame implementation. So this frame iframe, the component of this iframe, how that is implemented, like some of the frame or any of the frame out of all this frame is a default frame by the developer. So let's take an example. My default equals true is this frame. So what I said, my default frame is my top frame. So there is another attribute named as default, and I said this default equals true to this this particular frame. Rest all the frames are my not default frame. These are all my normal frames. So the default frame means whenever any of the user comes to this page, by default focus is on this frame, so that even if I can log in with my automation code, my first focus is always on this top frame. That means very easily I can access any of the web element or any of the elements from the top frame without doing any other operations. So with this, I can see this is my default frame, and my first thing is possible, that is this condition returns true that I am on home page. I can go inside. Now I can go inside and I said if before that I can just identify this frame. Now I can write first. I wanted to identify my username, so I write my driver dot find element by dot id, and that id is equals to a user name. I said this is my username, and I can simply store this as a web element. Though any find elements return you the web element, I can simply say this is a web element, a user name. Okay, this is my web element username. Okay, now on this username I wanted to do some actions. So first action that I wanted to do is if username, I can say if username is displayed. I can say if this username is displayed, then only I can do further action. And then I said if username is enable. So first if username is displayed, and then I said if is it enabled, then do the operation. Then simply do the operation, and that operation is I'm just showing you one action. Later on I'm not going to write all this code in that detail. For that we can implement our own common functions for the same. Okay, now first I said if it is present, and second I am seeing if it is enabled to perform any of the action. That means it is a clickable. So once it is clickable, what action I can do? I can simply write, this username dot get text. I'll not go more in detail, and I can say here better, I can write in this way, username dot get text dot equals, and that is my username. So if that is true, then only we jump within it. That means first I can validate whether it is present. Here I am validating is present. Here I am validating it is clickable, and here I am validating is equals. So my first task is over. Now I wanted to transfer, or I wanted to focus on the fund transfer. So what I need to do now? So I wanted to identify that whether the fund transfer is present on the left navigation or not. Yes, so the difference, some of people are asking what is the difference between is enabled and is displayed. So is displayed will validate whether the element is present within the DOM or not. Is displayed always validate whether it is present, and is enabled always validate whether it is clickable. That means if, let's take an example, if any of the text box is there, for example if this is a text box, but if this text box is present, that means it is displayed. But if it is not enabled, that means if this text box is not enabled, then do you think I can enter anything in this text box? Definitely not. I will definitely get an exception. So for that we are validating all these different conditions over here. Now the same we can create our common function for the same. Now I said if this get username, then I can validate, and now I wanted to validate my fund transfer. URL. So for that I cannot go directly and see driver.find element by link text fund transfer. No. If I write in this way, driver.find element by dot link text, and I said it is a fund transfer. If I try to identify in this way, definitely it will throw no such element exception. This will throw you a no such element exception. Okay, so to avoid this, what we will do, so the frame, how iframe works, I explained previously. We need to get an access of any frame element by doing switching to that particular frame. So what I'll write, driver dot switch to dot. Once I write frame, if you can see here, there are three different frame. That means there are three different methods like frame. The first is input parameter, that is integer. Second, it has an input parameter as a string. And third, it has an input parameter as a web element. So these three methods are the method overloading, one of the concept of method overloading within this frame. Okay, so if anybody asks you the question, tell me where you can see or where you implemented any of the, or you wanted to explain any of the object oriented concept of method overloading. So you can take this command, that driver dot switch to dot frame. So in this we have the method overloaded, like there are three different method overloading, like same method name but different, same number of parameters but data type is different. That is one of the concept of method overloading. So what I can show you, these are the way. Let's say the first way is I simply write driver dot switch to dot integer, that is index. Once I write index, if you can see frame 1 and here frame 2. So this is at my 0 index and this is at my 1 index. So I'll simply write here 1. If you can see driver dot switch to dot frame 1, that means it will switch to my, first frame, that is my left frame. Okay, so I can switch to this frame. Now once I switch to this frame, my next task is I wanted to identify the fund transfer link. So I'll write driver dot find element by dot link text, and I said a fund transfer. I can simply write fund transfer. So if this is a link is present, again we can do, but I'll not do in more detail that it is displayed and it is enabled and all other areas. I'll simply validate if that fund transfer link is displayed, or we can say this is my web element, okay, and I said my fund transfer web element. So if this is my web element and fund transfer, I can simply check whether it has the link, the value or string value that match with my expectation. Now I validate that it is matching with my expectation. That is if the fund transfer dot get text dot equals, I said fund transfer. Okay, so if I can validate this, then only I'll jump within the next loop. That means I can go within it and then I can validate if I wanted to now switch to the account balance. Now I wanted to switch to the account balance. So I'm going to show you all the methods those are used in the frame. So first, that is your by ID, by index, that means 0, 1, 2 or any index. Now I am going to switch to the right frame or my quick link frame by using a name or ID. So I'll simply write here driver dot switch to dot, I can say a frame, and I'll take the value that is right frame. So what I did here, I simply move to the right frame now. How do we move now? This time I used a string. This time I use the second method of frame, that is using string. If you can see here, the second method I'm using from the target locator, that is a string. Okay, so that string is currently saying I wanted to identify this frame particularly with the right frame, the name as a right frame. Now what I'll do, once I move to the right frame, now I wanted to click on first identify the account balance. If it is displayed, then click on account balance and then validate whether we do have the 10,000, as a value here. So again that 10,000 is present in my center frame. So let's go back and write here that driver dot find element by dot, I can say uh, what okay, so by dot id, and I said id, that is my account val, that is my id for example. Now I can store that into a web element. I can store that into a web element. I'm not going in more detail, guys, in the code base, that you guys are more aware now how do we implement the code base nowadays. Okay, so now web element, that is my account val link. So now I said this is my account val. Now I can validate, and if this account val is displayed and I can write if account balance displayed and account balance is enabled. Let's say I'm taking both the condition here rather than writing in the multiple. I can say if both are satisfied, if both the condition met, then I can do that account balance dot click. Once I click, then I can see this account balance as a 10,000. Now I wanted to validate. Now I wanted to validate this 10,000. So as of now, I've switched to the frame by integer, that is my index. I switched to the frame by my string, that is a string. Now the third, that I am going to switch to the frame by using a web element. So the third, that I'm going to switch by the web element. So I can identify this web element by ID here. So let's try. Now I want to switch, that is driver dot switch to dot frame, and this time I am taking this last, that is a web element. So to going before that web element, let's identify one of the frame, that is a center frame. So how do I identify? Driver dot find element by dot id, and I'm writing here a center frame, and then I can store that center frame. Then I can store that center frame within the web element center frame, for example. And then I pass that center frame. Here itself, that is center frame. So if you can see, this time I am switching to the frame by a web element. This time I am switching to the frame by web element. Previously I switched by a string. Previously I switched by a index. So these are the three important methods of any of the if you wanted to work on the frame, then these are three majorly important methods those are used. Okay, now I switch here. Now what is my next task? That I wanted to get the text, that is a 10,000. So believe me, you will see some more additional methods also on that. I'll show you that too. So just give us some time. I wanted to show you the parent-child relation also on the frame. Just give me some time, guys. Okay, so now what I wanted to validate this 10,000. So I can go back here and I write driver dot find element by dot id, and I said a value, for example, or balance, for example. I can get any of the value here, and then I can simply say this is my web element balance. Okay, and I simply validate this balance. I'm not writing more in detail about this. If balance dot get text, and then I said is equals to 10,000, for example. If balance dot get text is equals to 10,000, if those are the 10,000, then only I said I successfully validated the balance. Now once I validate, I want to do the final step of this whole step is that I want to click on the logout now. Okay, so the final step is to click on this logout. So how do we click on the logout? Once that balance is validated, now the logout is again available within my frame 1. But if you can see that frame 1 is my default frame. So if you can see here, the frame 1 is my default frame. So it is a default equals true. So now, do you think we need to go and identify that? Definitely not. What we can write here, I will simple write driver dot switch to dot, I say here a default content. When I switch to dot default content, the default content will say I am going to switch to the default frame here. So what is my default frame right now? So frame 1 is my default frame. So using default content, I am switching to that default frame now. Okay, so once I switch to this default frame, then I can do the next thing, that is I wanted to identify driver dot find element by dot link text. I said, and the link text is my logout, and then I simply say here dot click. Okay, I'm not going to validate anything here. So directly I can click here dot click. So if you can see, I write all the code that first I validate the home page, then I validate whether username is my username, then I validate whether the font transfer is available on my left navigation, then I switch to the right frame and validate if account balance link is there. Once account balance link is there, I just click and then validate whether 1000 rupees is my balance in my account, and then I switch to the top frame, or I can say the default frame, and then click on the logout button. So whole this my flow is simply automated using the frame now. Okay, so this is very simple implementation of frame. We can do lot many things into this as per the framework. Okay, we can do that later on. Now I'm going to show you another example. So let me delete this. I'll show you another example. Let's say this is my frame. So this is my parent frame. Under this parent frame, let's take an example. This is my child frame. Okay, so now parent frame, this is my parent frame. I'll write here, this is my parent frame, and I have here some of the elements. Okay, and this is my child frame. This is my child frame, and I do have some of the elements. So now the question in interview people may ask you, I wanted to identify the child with the help of parent. What they will say? They will say, I wanted to identify the child with the parent. Okay, that is basic question, definitely basic question people may ask you. How do we identify this child frame with the parent frame? Okay, so now let me show you this code base. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we must switch to this outer frame first. Okay, so that is your parent frame. Once we switch to this outer or the parent frame, then we can find the total number of iframe inside this outer frame. Let's say currently we do have only one, but there may be possibility that one frame maybe hold the multiple iframes. Okay, now we can switch to any of the frame, any of this inner frame by which you need. You can just switch to that frame, and then you can try to identify the elements from that particular frame. This is what our task now. Okay, so now let's go back to our code base. How do we identify this? I'll simply write here. So first I will write driver dot I can say switch to dot my parent frame. Okay, I say driver dot switch to dot a parent frame. So your parent frame is, let's take an example of parent frame, that is my, I'll write here a parent. Okay, then again you can write, once you switch to that parent frame, then you can write your, again you can switch to your any of the child frame. This is how we can just simply pass and identify any of the parent frame, and then we can switch. So the important thing is, I wanted to just show you one method. The method is your parent frame method. I wanted to just show you the method that is a parent frame. So you can switch to this parent frame using any of other things, like we can simply say it here also, if you wanted to check that, if you can switch to this driver dot, and same way, driver dot switch to dot and then parent frame, that is also possible. So you can just switch to your parent frame and then do your operation. Okay, so this is overall about the frame, guys. Now I would request every one of you, if you want, and you want me to continue, and any other suggestion that you do have, or if you want the assignments again, then please make your comment on the assignment section here, so that we can share the assignments with you. And you can just do like the video, or if you want, you can share the video with someone else, with your nearer and dearest. And any questions, comments, you can just post on this video. I'll try to answer all those questions. That's all what I can stop it here today, and we will meet again on every alternate day session. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Have a good night. Bye.